Hello, my name is Andy from PCR Global. Welcome to another one of our uploaded videos, Real Risk Management, the Ground Truth series. I suppose some of you are going to wonder why on earth some bloke in the woods with a camera, and it's a good point. But I must admit, at these times it is doing my mental health a great service, so I'm happy to do that. So a few days ago, I uploaded a video and it talked about a grab bag mentality in relation to what you've got in your mind, what you can bring to the table when you're actually on the ground, when you haven't got books to read, you haven't got Google to look at. It's just you, the client, the situation. So it's like situational thinking, situational risk management, I suppose, as opposed to, as I say, having the time to read books and get your references. So it's a similar video. This is a similar mnemonic, I should say. So we're going to talk this time about PDCA, Plan, Do, Check and Act. And I should imagine many people have heard of that. It's been around a long time, since the 1950s, when William Edwards Deming brought this concept to the fore, really, in Japan. It's also known as the Stewart cycle. So just don't take it for verbatim in terms of Deming. It's interesting to read back up on the history of it. It has also been called Plan, Do, Check and Adjust, because when we get to the A, you'll see it's not just act, it can be adjust. So, down to the video. P. So P is for planning. This is where you decide on your plan for your organization. Remember, an organization it's there. It's already living, breathing before you as a consultant go in. So very rarely are you going to join any organization right at the very start to advise them. They're going to be in a timeline of continuance. But at all times, they should be planning. And at all times, they will be doing what they've planned. So we must bear that in mind when we think about the planning area of this. But ultimately, planning comes down to sitting around thinking, designing the system, whether that's a health and safety management system, a security management system, environmental quality, HR, or whichever system we're talking about in the business context. So PDCA, I just forgot to mention it, it's actually a business improvement tool. So it aims to look for continuous improvement. Plan, do, check, act. Just the same if you're choosing where to go on holiday or you're choosing what to watch in the cinema. You're going to plan it, you're going to do it. Invariably when you're there, you're going to comment on it, and after it, you will comment on it. There's your check, and then you're going to act really to see if whether you're actually going to go back to the cinema or go back on that place of holiday. So the planning part feeds back into what you're going to do in the future. When you go in as a consultant, you're able to see if the company is planned, and you're able to see what the company's planning for. So planning, what does that look like physically? Generally, it boils down to planning activities. So they decide, as I said earlier, they're designing their system. So you would potentially have a policy. That policy, generally, the top level is a statement which is going to be signed by senior leadership. It's going to be dated. Hopefully, it's going to be reviewed. Whether that plan is what happens on the ground, that's what you'll get to pick up in the do element. I should say as well that the HSE in the UK have been following the PDCA method for some time in their very useful document called HSG 65, Managing for Health and Safety. That document had been out a long time. In 2013, it got revised. It's a very useful document. It talks plan, do, check, act, and it takes us through what we're going to talk about, what it really looks like. It's a free document, very useful to download. And also the ISO standards, the management standards, they have now utilising that PD framework within their own framework, context, leadership, planning, support, operations, performance, evaluation and continual improvement, which we know as the high level structure. Back to P. So P, people are planning, people are writing out their plans, they're deciding on how they're going to undertake sort of risk management or business activities on the ground. D for do. This is when now they would have, that planning implementation should be done. They're actually undertaking their operations on the ground. The objectives that they would have set in the plan area are now happening on the ground. So when you get on the ground, you will be able to see, because they're actually doing it, whether what they've planned for is actually working on the ground, or whether that plan is a tablet of stone gathering dust back in some head office somewhere. So the do part is where the operations are taking place. Also within that area, depending whether you're looking at the HSG 65 or you're looking at the ISO PDCA, will be getting your risk profile for the organisation. So each organisation, understandably, has a different risk profile. If you're in the same industry, then those risk profiles are going to be similar, but they'll be still the same same threats to organisations if you're in the security context. But that risk profile is important, because within that risk profile, you are looking at the context of that individual organisation, and you're going to be able to tell if the organisation is sort of taken heed of that risk profile. Not just if they've documented it, it's what they're doing on the ground. What are the control measures? What are the safe systems of work? What training's gone in? Just by looking at the training, you will see if they have planned, if they've understood their risk profile, because that should be an output into their training. So the risk profile is important. Have a look at their risk registers, if they have them. Have a look at their strategic risk registers, their point of work risk assessments, their vulnerability assessments, if it's more security related. So that do element with the risk profile, again, is a very important element. That's P, D. Now we're going to C, check. So just think about it, like I said earlier, if you're going to go to a certain restaurant, you're going to go to a certain pub, you've gone there. When you're there, you're going to look around, you look at the ambience, you look at what the food's like, what the service is like. You're actually checking if your plan is as you want it to be. So that check element, when we put that formally into an organisation perspective, that's going to be how you're measuring your performance. How are you measuring your performance? Are you doing active measuring when you're actually getting out on the ground, you're having a look to see what's going on, or you're doing reactive monitoring when you're actually reacting to things that have potentially gone wrong, whether that's customer complaints in a quality perspective, or it's accidents, incidents, or ill health in a health and safety perspective, or whether it's attacks or defeated attacks in a security context, pollution in an environmental context. So that check area is vitally important. It's often not done formally in organisations, and when we see it not done formally, invariably that's when the whole framework can fall down, because people aren't acting on what's been already identified. These are gifts. Yeah, these are gifts. So when you think of somebody coming in a health and safety context and undertaking LEV inspection, local exhaust ventilation, they're going to produce a report. If they've done a noise report, they're going to produce a report. In the security context, if people are going out on the ground to do a recce, they're going to produce a report. If we don't look at the report and analyse, not just look at, analyse and evaluate the outputs from that report, then we might not as well have done the checks in the first place. Remember now, a lot of organisations, the health and safety manager, the security manager is undertaking this check-in element, and they're entrusted to do that. But unfortunately, what we do see on the ground is that a lot of health and safety or security managers aren't as competent as they should be, even though they've been entrusted by the organisation. So as a boardroom, as the senior management team, that check element is your time to check that the departments are doing what they should be doing. This is not being detrimental to health and safety, security, environmental quality managers. This is just a fact of operating on the ground and seeing the outputs of an ill-fitting system and an ill-checked system. Also, we do get to see that some organisations, believe it or not, they actually want that department not to be checking. They want, and for want of a better word, an incompetent or a less competent individual in that department or in that individual role, because they don't want anything being brought to the forefront. A sad situation, but I'm sure those in business will potentially recognise it. And if you recognise it in yourself, then I think that you're not doing anybody a justice by operating in that mentality. A lot of the times, guys, this is down to naivety. This is what we see on the ground. And sometimes it just needs that little bit more education into those areas. So that's PDC, plan, do, check, and then act. Now it's time for action. Are you going to act on the data that you've got? Are you going to go back to that restaurant? Are you going to use that service provider again? This is where you get your chance to do your action plans. These feed back into your objectives, which you should have written or undertaken in the planning element. You set out your objectives to achieve your aims and your goals, and then you must act on them. Again, going back to the report analogy a minute ago, you look at those reports and people often aren't acting on them. So how are you going to do that review? How often are you going to do that review in that act element? You've checked it, now you've got to act on it. Reviewing your policies, reviewing your procedures, your accident, ill health, absence data. I uploaded a video not long ago on mental health, an area which is completely, I shouldn't say completely, but 99%, it's overlooked by most companies. They're not viewing that. And if you can focus on people's mental health and keep them in work and keep them productive, everybody is a winner. It is going to keep the costs down, everybody happy. And it's going to make, again, your business much more healthy. So that was PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Another sort of area of grab bag mentality which you can have in your mind when you tip up on site or when you're doing your reports or when you're just looking at an organization in a whole. It is a very good business improvement tool. I hope you found the video useful. One more from me, as always, that's stay safe, stay healthy, especially in these times, stay productive. Don't trust it, test it. Thanks for listening.